How many times have you watched a movie or played a game and thought, why the hell did they just do that? For me, it's a lot, but I also might be a bit more nitpicky than others. Regardless, the most important part of any action someone makes isn't what the action itself is, but why they did it. Viewed without context, someone might do something seen as bad, like shooting a boar in the face with an arrow. Provided with justification, like the boar was rampaging and posed a threat to the lives of a whole village, and suddenly this doesn't seem so bad. The character had a motive, and this is a vital tool for interesting characters. The juxtaposition of different characters' motives can make or break a story. It could be too contrived on one end or too simple on the other. I'm going to discuss the importance of that as well as the concept of cyclicity in storytelling in what I think is a great example of both, Princess Mononoke. Imagine a superhero movie where there's a villain whose ultimate goal is just to rule. Everything they do is to seize control. I won't name any examples, I don't want to create any unnecessary contempt, but in my opinion this is often boring. I don't think every character in every piece of media needs to have some grand plot. Sometimes it's fun to just shut off and enjoy a hero being evil. That's essentially what the original Star Wars trilogy was, and I love those films. It's not boring because they want control. It's boring because they want control because they want control. Makes sense? Let's look at a motive tree. This villain wants to rule the world because he wants to rule the world. On its own, this is dull. The deeper a chain of rationale can go, though, the better, and it doesn't have to be much. Look at Thanos in Infinity War. His ultimate goal is the power to wipe out half of the population, but it goes a bit deeper than that. Thanos wants to collect the Infinity Stones so he can wipe out half of the population because there's an overpopulation issue that he experienced. That personal experience is important. There are 100 better things Thanos could have done that made more sense than killing off half the universe, but motives don't have to make sense to us, they have to make sense to them. Think about any time someone still questioned something you did even after you gave them your justification. You probably still think you were right, and they still think it makes no sense. What makes a compelling character is that their unique experiences and cognition lead to their rationale. Thanos isn't the greatest character ever written, but showing what led to his intent made the movie much more enjoyable to me rather than some run-of-the-mill villain, or millen. Even better if the lines between good and evil are blurred because of this. Insert our topic of interest, Princess Mononoke. At a cursory glance, Mononoke could be viewed as good versus evil, the humans as a whole being evil and the animals being good. There are two reasons for this. The first is our hero Ashitaka. While he is a human, he's initially divorced from the struggle seen between both sides, giving him a more objective view. Since we follow him for most of the movie, it makes sense that we might empathize with him. He sees the actions of the humans as more morally negative than that of the animals, and we're probably inclined to agree. This is helped by the second reason, how certain characters are introduced. On the animals' side, you have the moment Nago is introduced by name, a story told by a villager of Irontown. By their own admission, they dug up Nago's forest and effectively invaded their land, eventually running them out. He's seen fleeing and crying out, shrouded by fire, and it fades to an angry Ashitaka once again informing us of how we should feel. A quick aside, I'm not saying you're forced to feel what Ashitaka feels or that you should, just that he's our most consistent barometer of emotion and he seems to react to the tone the movie is trying to enforce. Then you have characters like San and Moro who similarly want to defend their home, but most importantly there's Lady Eboshi. In that same story, she gets a formal introduction showing her as the cause of the fire and the boars having to flee. This is all shown with a booming and dark track playing over top with a shot of Eboshi staring towards the burning forest. If this is Star Wars, Eboshi is the Emperor and the animals are the rebels, but where there are none to be found in Emperor Sidious, characters here have motives for the things they do. Since I'm using her as a comparison already, I'll start with Lady Eboshi. We don't learn a ton about her long-term history, but we can piece together the things she wants to do, and that multi-motive aspect is another way things can be made interesting. First, I'll look at the major whats. Eboshi has a couple things. The first is that she wants to drive the animals and gods away. This is so she can dig up the forest to get the iron underneath to continue advancing her people, making Irontown the richest land around. Her other desire is to kill the forest spirit, partially because she's helping Jigo with a deal she made for his soldiers she needed to help keep Lord Asano at bay. The other reason is because killing the forest spirit would turn other animals into dumb beasts, and Princess Mononoke would turn human again. I don't know why this is important to her, but some speculation leads me to believe it's because the animals would have a lesser grasp on humans in general, like Princess Mononoke. Either way, these are the main things she tries to do in the film, and even in the simplistic format I've done, this is enough variation to excel her beyond a straightforward villain if you still consider her one, although this video is not to discuss the morality behind each character. Another character I mentioned was Jigo, a monk who assists Ashitaka early on into him reaching the West. He's got an arguably more nefarious cause than Eboshi, but similarly has a fair share of motivation. Jigo offers Eboshi soldiers for his own reason, to get her to help him kill the forest spirit, as the Emperor promised immense wealth to anyone who brings him the head. His justification is that everybody wants everything and he might actually get it. While he only has a single action I'm using, the more separation from the final motive in the tree typically results in more complex and interesting decision making. Not only that, but like I said, the way characters' actions and motives intertwine is a major aspect of the story. Both Eboshi and Jigo want to kill the forest spirit for their own reasons, but they come together because Eboshi needs the soldiers and Jigo's plan to get someone else to do it for him. Multiple characters stand in their way though. San and Moro share a pretty common goal throughout the movie, so I'll look at them together. Now, the two don't have a ton of actions going on in the grand scheme of the story, but this is okay, mostly because they're on the defense, and the desire to defend their home is an easily digestible motive. The same can be said for the boars, so the last character to talk about is Ashitaka. Ashitaka is forced to be exiled from his tribe and travel west to find a cure. This is his main goal, and it's pretty easy to justify. He's going to die. Beyond that, he finds what might be his last calling: stop the fighting. This is because, as he was told by the wise woman, he must see with eyes unclouded by hate, which is what turned Nago into a demon and what causes his own curse to grow. So he sees how unnecessary all the fighting is, his desire being to live together in harmony and stop the hatred, otherwise others will end up being just like him and Nago, dead or dying. I'm not going to go into the minor actions of every character, as even though it's very interesting, the minutia could be a separate video entirely, or at the very least, it'd make this one longer than I want it to be. I will mention some only to further show how their actions interconnect and how it makes the story so compelling. The only reason Ashitaka ends up in the West is because Nago was poisoned and driven insane by an iron ball created by Eboshi and her weapons used to destroy the forest Nago was protecting. He was protecting them because the humans are trying to extend their reach into the boar's land. Ashitaka was kept on path to Irontown and the Forest Spirit by Jigo, and my speculation leads me to believe Jigo did this because he thought Ashitaka might be helpful in finding the Forest Spirit, the seemingly only possibility to cure his curse. Jigo did say he was getting Eboshi to do his dirty work, so he's not above it for Ashitaka too, after remarking how he fought like a demon. He does help him with shelter and food though. This might be because of his ulterior motive, but there are aspects of Jigo that keep him in more of a dark gray morally. Similarly, Eboshi shows Ashitaka her secret, being that she bandaged and housed lepers and gave them work, when no others would even see them as human. This is swiftly after she realizes she's the reason Ashitaka is cursed to begin with, and I think showing him the lepers was her attempt to show him her gentler side. Of course, this backfires when he sees that she just has them making weapons, but I believe this was her intent. Mind you, I'm not saying she didn't do it out of her own kindness. She also buys the contracts of brothel girls and gives them a more preferable lifestyle, as they say themselves. It's a sort of symbiotic relationship she has with those she interacts with, but there are genuine aspects of goodness. Especially considering her final line being that she wants to thank Ashitaka and San for saving them all and wants to build a new Irontown better than before. Of course, she does kill the Forest Spirit in the end, paying for it with her right arm, countless lives, and Irontown itself. However, severing its head leads to Ashitaka having the chance to return it, which cures his curse where the Forest Spirit hadn't before. The brilliance of this film comes from the characters and their motives, the justification for everything they did. Without those, their actions become hollow and the story would seem too coincidental if the events still somehow happened. But beyond being more interesting than I want to rule the world because I want to rule the world, their decisions are able to impact each other and make for a more intricate story. There is one more major cog though. Cyclicity is a difficult thing for me in stories. Anytime a story ends with the notion that it repeats afterwards, it feels to me as though anything the characters did was irrelevant, especially if it was preordained. Something like Devilman Crybaby. But what if a specific character's motive was to preserve life itself instead of some ultimate prophecy? Analyzing the actions and motives of the Forest Spirit is a little more speculative than other characters. It doesn't speak and it's not often seen. Instead, you're left with its sparing interactions and what other characters say about it. Well, that and the recurring themes of the movie, which uses the Forest Spirit to act out. The most important of its decisions was resurrecting Ashitaka, but leaving his curse intact. From the boar's perspective, the Forest Spirit wouldn't have healed a human by its own volition, particularly when it didn't save Nago. Of course, they don't realize Nago died far from the Forest Spirit's clutches, and I'm not so sure it would have helped with Nago's curse to begin with, the same way it didn't help with Ashitaka's. This tells us the Forest Spirit is not a god of animals and nature, but of all living things, humanity included, and please don't just tell me, well, humans are animals. So why did he resurrect Ashitaka anyway? Ashitaka has never posed a threat to nature or those living among it in general, and the Forest Spirit had seen him before. Given it's an almighty god, it likely recognizes this. Not just that, but that Ashitaka can have a positive effect on everything going on. But why didn't he cure the curse? I surmise that he either couldn't or shouldn't, probably the latter. If he had, what reason would Ashitaka have to stay and help? We know he probably would have because of his nobility, but does the Forest Spirit know that? The curse gives him a reason to continue his goal of ending all the hatred. Of course, I'm not entirely sure what the Forest Spirit's extent is either intellectually or supernaturally, but I'm gonna go with this line of thought. Surely it knows of the war between humans and animals, so a central figure whose desire is to put an end to the fighting is useful. In the end, though, the Forest Spirit loses his head. After this, its Nightwalker version goes on a mindless hunt for it, killing all he comes in contact with. Another combination of motives is seen as Jigo fights for the head with San and Ashitaka, leading to the latter returning it to the Forest Spirit. In its final act, the Forest Spirit falls and destroys Irontown, and its body dissipates into the valley, causing the desolate mountains to regrow its vegetation. The final lesson it bestowed to those who took its life was the ramifications of their decisions and the inevitable existence of life itself. This is further enforced when Ashitaka sees his curse is lifted, and remarks that the Forest Spirit is not dead, but is life, and that it's telling them it's time for both of them to live. For motives, the Forest Spirit has now cured Ashitaka of his curse because he was able to achieve what the Forest Spirit revived him for. Or maybe you believe that the Forest Spirit couldn't have cured his curse to begin with. In that case, I would theorize that since the curse spreads with hate, the ultimate act of good from Ashitaka is what cured it, though I'm not sure this is what happened. Then there's the Cyclicity. What I like about it is rather than the world being fully wiped to start anew, we end off with the same set of characters, and the idea of nature and life as a whole are beginning a new cycle. This way, the characters we know can learn from their mistakes and can try again, but better. The Forest Spirit's chaotic rampage after losing his head is a sort of failsafe. He's a guardian of nature, and whoever attempted to kill him needs to be stopped, destroying its own forest and those among it, so it can regrow more safely immediately after. You could say that was the main motive behind everything the Forest Spirit did. Every life it took, every life it returned, was to teach the importance of nature, of life, and its inevitability. I don't expect every story to have as much detail put into the motives of every character like Princess Mononoke. I don't think every story should, necessarily. Again, Star Wars is fun. Marvel movies, as much as I complain about many of their aspects, can also be fun, but even an ounce of effort into character decisions can have an immense effect on a story's intricacy. Princess Mononoke's characters all have their own agenda, and the combination culminates in a brilliant story topped off with the cyclic nature and the Forest Spirit's attempt to uphold that as its own motive, and you're left with one of the most enchanting films ever made. The important part isn't necessarily what's happening in a movie, it's why.